is a new infrastructure to build Islamic financial systems and models on, which nobody has a right to stop us from doing. Again, that is powerful. I want to say in a nutshell, Web3 is about financial freedom, right? It is a freedom to own your own money. Why is Web3 powerful? It eliminates that middleman. If you put your money in a bank, you don't own your money, the bank owns your money. What is the LifeDAO? The LifeDAO supports each and every one of its members with tools to achieve financial freedom. And this is very important for Muslims in the West because it's crazy expensive to have a Muslim burial in the West.
From Singapore to the United States, from the UAE to Saudi Arabia, Shareen Lee's journey is anything but ordinary. Born in Singapore's high-pressure education system, she left home at 17 and built her first business in California, surviving 9/11, financial crisis, and the realities of entrepreneurship. Alongside her husband, she went on to build and sell a marketplace startup, and today she is a co-founder of TAKADAO, pioneering community-owned finance and re-emerging how people protect and grow their wealth. This is the story of resilience, reinvention, and a woman shaping the future of Web3. This episode of PCHM is proudly brought to you by Yafa Limited, your premier source of authentic Palestinian produce and finest quality dates in the UK. Alright, sis, thank you very much for your time. So let's start from the beginning. Because you're a very technical person with your husband and amazing things going on. How was your childhood in Singapore? Tell me about, where you're from, and how was your childhood in Singapore where you grew up?
Well, first of all, brother, assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh. Thank you so much for inviting me. And it's a maktub that we met, the way we met in London, and then,
Yes.
all the things that happened after. My childhood in Singapore, I think, is very typical. So I grew up, for context, I grew up in Singapore. I'm originally from there. I lived there until I was 17, and then I left. And so it's been like 20 plus years outside of the country. Yeah, close to 30, subhanAllah. So I would say that those were the formative years, but then a lot of other experiences have changed me. Childhood in Singapore, I think any Singaporean will tell you, very stressful, going to school, long hours, a lot of pressure, a lot of competition. But otherwise very typical.
Is it like a Pakistani parents always go to school, work hard, keep studying?
Yeah, because I'm Chinese, so Chinese parents, not that different
Chinese
from the
parents.
Pakistani.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, not that different from the Pakistani parents, I think. We have all of us Asians have that in common. But yeah, it's a very, education-focused culture. And then Singapore specifically, because of the historical context, it doesn't really have any natural resources. It's always relied on people. So there's this push by the government always to get the population educated, get the population at a position where they are like a world-class labor, let's put it that way. So it is. I think I've heard it's much worse now. Let's put it that way.
Sure. So why did you decide to leave? Like when? How old were you? You mentioned like 17, 18, were you?
Yeah. So after O levels,
for a 17-year-old, it's a massive decision, isn't it, to leave the country?
Well, no, actually, because my entire family migrated.
Oh.
So my father has always been a businessman, and he was always doing import-export. So for him, it was kind of natural that he was always traveling. So at that point in time, I think he said he found something better elsewhere. And there were a lot of converging factors, right? So my brother also wanted to go to college, etc. And Singapore was very competitive. So it was very difficult for him to get into a local college. So he was like, okay, let's go overseas. And my father had already natural ties in the US. So that's where we moved. We moved to the US after my O levels when I was about 17. And then I was there for roughly 10 years or approximately, got married there, started first business there, had my first oldest son there, then left. Then we went to the GCC. We first landed in the UAE, and this was 2005.
And how was that decision to moving from America to a Gulf country like
It was very strange, to be honest. SubhanAllah. So it's very strange because of all these, I guess, misconceptions of the Gulf countries. But it was also very strange because, I never lived in a Muslim country before. So generally everything was very strange, but alhamdulillah, we were also really looking forward to it, right? Because you can imagine, so we started our first business, it was 2001.
You started, when you say we, who started that business in 2000?
Me and Murad, my husband.
Okay,
so we've always been partners. Like we got married end of 2000. By August 2001, we started our first business. And in between, we actually had a lot of other failed exploits, I call them. But like the first business that we actually had some success, we started in 2001, August. And then if you have your timeline in your mind, a month later, it was September 11th, right? So there was a lot. And we were in Southern California, so in Los Angeles. And we had lived in San Diego prior to that. So we were very close to where the hijackers were originated. That's the official story anyways. So anyways, there was a lot of these types of undercurrents going on at that point in time. So at some point we were like, it's time to go. We want to move to a Muslim country, right? We want to be it was our hijrah at the time. We wanted to go to somewhere where we could practice our religion, where we didn't have to always compromise about being a Muslim, etc. And alhamdulillah, at the time also when we left, we had just sold our business. So we had some cash and it was just the right time, alhamdulillah. And my oldest son at the time, it was a year and a half. So everything just kind of fell into place and we wanted to move and we wanted to make hijrah and we wanted to go somewhere where it was a Muslim country. So despite it being very weird, and not knowing what to expect, at the end, we were just really happy to have made the move because we wanted to go to a Muslim country.
So yeah, where we were, so you moved from America to UAE, you sold your business. Tell me about your first business. What were your first business? What did you guys do?
Our first actual company was it was in food and beverage. So it was a funny story. I was in college and there was some kind of urban revival class. And so they took us on a field trip to the neighborhood because this was in Southern California, USC. And around that neighborhood, there were there's a lot of urban revival projects. So it just so happened that we chanced upon this one ex-garments factory. So they used to make clothes in this factory and they had converted it into a food court, right? And it was this kind of Christian charity, something like that was ahead, in charge of this project. And this, the whole point of it was to give immigrants a way to start their own businesses, right? So they have very easy terms. They didn't require a lot of money. They didn't require a lot of credit to go and open your first restaurant. So that's what we did. So I walked by, I was like, oh wow, we always want to do something. So let's do it. We finally have an opportunity. I had no experience in food and beverage besides being a waitress at some point. My husband was the same, but he had a little bit more knowledge than me, but we were just entrepreneurs. We just wanted to do something. So we took the opportunity, we leapt at it, and then we started our own restaurant. It was a little, kind of a little stall in a food court, let's put it that way, but it had a full kitchen. So we ended up doing a lot of catering mainly, etc. But yeah, that was the first one.
And what did you learn about people? Because as a young person, you do your first successful business. And what do you learn about people, about the work culture, about yourself? What do you learn about yourself? What do you learn about the business? What do you learn about the people from your first business?
The thing is, right, in retrospect, I can tell you everything the skills that were developed during that endeavor. But at the time, I'm pretty sure I learned nothing. It was just, when you're doing business, you're just so focused on one day to the next and executing what's the next milestone, etc., and then all the crap that's happening, that you don't really maybe have time to reflect so much, or at least I didn't at the time. But now, as many years later, I think some of the key lessons were, number one, it's not predictable at all, and there's no right formula, right? So when you go to school, so I was a very successful student, as you can imagine. When you go to school, you have a rubric, and you have to do A, B, C, D, F, G, and if you do it exactly like what the teacher said, and you do your homework, and you put in the effort, you're gonna get an A for the class. You're gonna succeed. This doesn't apply in real life. It doesn't apply in business, because nothing is ever predictable. There's no right way or wrong way to do things. And a lot of it is subhanAllah qadar Allah, right? Something just happens, and very much you see that the success comes from one thing that led to another thing that was completely beyond your desire or your will to have done.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two is, I would say, people skills is probably the most important thing in business, right? People skills and being able to build a network and being able to always find the right people to do the right things at the right time. Because you can never do it alone, right? So again, coming from the background of being a student and education, you're independent. You can pretty much do just about anything alone. You can succeed fantastically in school by yourself, right? You almost never need other people.
Yeah.
Besides the occasional school project. But when it comes to business, when it comes to real life, you cannot do it alone. Never. At any given time. I mean, I remember the first big challenge was literally getting our building plans for one of the, we went on to build another restaurant subsequent to this one, right? So the second one, we had to convert an old office into a restaurant. So we had to get the building plans, approved by the building department. And subhanAllah, I tried so many times. I went back to the building department. They rejected it. I went back. They rejected it. I went back. They rejected it. I went back. They rejected it. At least like 10 times. And on the last time, I'm like desperate, right? I'm just like, I don't know what to do anymore. On the last go, just so happens this guy walks by. SubhanAllah is a Muslim. He sees me with hijab and everything. And he's like, sister, do you need some help? And then I explain to him what we're doing. And then it turns out he's the manager. And he goes to the guy, he's like, the guy who rejected me like 10 times, right? And goes to him, he's like, just approve it, it's fine. No, I don't see anything wrong with the plans. And he approved it. SubhanAllah. And it's both qadr Allah, and as well as it just so happens that I happened to talk to the right guy at the right time, and things happen. But then it kept happening. So in business is what I keep finding. Whenever we are stuck, or even if we're not stuck, but like that opening, that thing that leads to some kind of success, comes through people, comes through a network, comes through asking for help, etc. So yeah, people, very important. And maybe the last thing is don't give up, right? Keep going. Don't give up. You just have to have thick skin, and you have to believe, and you have to keep going.
Yeah, brilliant. So where were we? So you moved from America to UAE, sold your business, get into the UAE. So how was your journey in the GCC? Like when you came to different culture. It's a Muslim country, but it's a different culture, Arab culture. So how was your journey from there? What's happened after that?
So interestingly enough, so in the GCC that I'm in, or rather Dubai, UAE, when we first moved there, and we moved not to Dubai, the city, we moved to Ras Al Khaimah, which was it's like 45 minutes away, or no, yeah, something like that. Hour away from Dubai. It was still very conservative. It's nothing like what it is today. Okay, so today UAE is extremely cosmopolitan. It's just like New York. It's just like LA, and lots of people maybe London. Lots of people compare it even to Las Vegas. So it's completely different from what it was. But when we moved there, it was still very conservative. It was still where they would close the shops, from Dhuhr to Asr time. Everybody take a nap. It was still where, especially where we were in Ras Al Khaimah, still where if you're not wearing niqab, it's like people look at you funny. It's still where, being Asian meant a certain thing, So that experience was, like I said, it was kind of strange. But alhamdulillah, what I really liked about it was that it was definitely a Muslim country. So a lot of things which we had to make excuses for when we were in the US, like, I remember my first son was born, and I had to, and I picked a doctor, and her partner was a man. Okay, so then when we were doing the delivery, she wasn't available, and she was gonna send the guy, and just go into this big explanation that no, I cannot have a male doctor, blah blah blah, and then we had to jump through some hoops in order to get another female doctor. So like things like this in the Muslim country generally don't have to explain. Right? They will never send you a man unless there is no woman available, period, right? But they know, they understand, right? And there's certain things when it comes to the way you bring up your kids, and if you're strict with your kids, that nobody's going to say to you, oh, why do you do this to your children, blah, blah, blah. It's just the norm. So these things really mattered. I mean, the other things which were a little bit surface, they didn't really matter as much. But when it came to, I want to say freedom, because a lot of people say, oh, there's freedom in the West and, the West is free, blah, blah, blah. It's not true. Not for everybody. Or when it comes to the freedom of how you want to live your life according to your religion, this is what you still find in Muslim countries. No, I'm not saying they are perfect, right? Lots of Muslim countries are terrible.
True.
But there is a basic understanding among the people that because of Islam, and they all understand Islam, that there are certain things which they will not try to violate and they will not try to sell you. Let's put it that way. So this was also my experience in GCC. Now, as I said, UAE changed a lot in the time that I was there. And when we finally left, this was in 2019, we left and we came to Saudi Arabia. And then it felt again like the UAE of the past. So in Saudi Arabia, it's extremely different. So the dynamic in the UAE is you have 80% expats, right? So people coming from outside. So you can imagine that their culture, the local Emirati culture, is extremely diluted because you don't have the population size. Not to mention, because of that, they tend to stick to each other, to one another, right? So you very, very rarely have any interactions with the locals unless you make a real effort. And even then, it's always, there's always a barrier. But here in Saudi, they're the majority. And so they immediately welcome you. They don't feel threatened and they're curious, right? And especially in 2019, it was just the beginning of the opening. So they're not used to seeing anybody from outside, anybody coming at all, visitors, etc. So it was a very, very nice thing. And alhamdulillah, I really enjoy Saudi Arabia. I really enjoy being in Riyadh. Besides obviously Mecca and Medina, but just the lifestyle, the culture, the openness, the hospitality is, mashallah, something I really appreciate, alhamdulillah.
So how, now you're in Riyadh, everything is fine, you guys are there. So obviously money is important as well to making all these moves.
Absolutely,
how
yeah.
you guys, I've got two questions. How was you were making your money? Obviously it's not easy to move countries. You just go there, and if you're doing 9 to 5,
correct,
you definitely can't do it. So about that and about how did you get into technology?
So alhamdulillah, because we were always entrepreneurs, I think I never really had a proper job, okay, until I had to, right? So when we made the first move from the US to the UAE, we had just sold our company, and we sold it for what was at the time significant amount of money. I think it was almost $500,000.
$500,000.
And so we had some cash, and alhamdulillah, because mashallah, again, as Muslims, we didn't really have much debt. So we had cash, we were cash rich, and we were like, okay, now it's time to go. And there were only 3 of us. It's maybe different today because mashallah, the family has grown a lot. But there were 3 of us, so it was easy to move. We didn't really need very much. And when you're young, you're fine with just about anything, right? So that was okay, but it's true. You do need to have money to make any kind of move, especially a cross-country kind of move, right? So that was number one. Then, when we were in the UAE, we had the leisure to go travel, and we actually started another business. So we went to Singapore, we went to Malaysia, I wanted to visit, I want to show my son and my husband, where did I come from, etc. And from there, we discovered, there's this entire industry of halal. Now, mind you, this is 2005. So all of this halal stuff is still very new, and Malaysia was doing this big push to do Malaysia halal. They were trying to create this industry with Malaysian goods being halal, etc. So they were trying to attract the Muslim population. So my husband is from Europe. So Murad, my husband, is from France originally. He's Algerian. He's from Algerian origin, but born and raised in France. And he was like, we should be importing this stuff and selling it in Europe, which is what we ended up doing. So that was our second business, and we set it up, just opportunistically, what we saw, what we had opportunity to do, that's what we ended up doing. And again, subhanAllah, qaddarallah, it was at that moment where such a thing called mad cow disease existed. I don't know if you remember mad cow disease, but mad cow disease meant that all gelatin was pig pork gelatin, right? Because of the restrictions on importing beef, etc. So it pretty much blew up, right? So we imported candies and, snacks from Southeast Asia to Europe, and then we were distributing it on the ground. And all the while, I was living in the UAE with the kids, and my husband's going back and forth, right? So we continue to build our business, our kind of net worth that way. The next thing was 2008 financial crisis. So between 2005, 2008, we were doing this business. Everything was going well. Then comes the financial crisis, and we were like, alhamdulillah, right before that, we kind of exited the business. My husband was getting tired with the traveling, etc. I was getting tired. And by then, I think we had probably almost 3 children by the time. Almost. I was probably pregnant or something. So we exited the business, and we were like, okay, what next? So we kind of just sat around and wasn't sure what to do because of the 2008 financial crisis, right? So there's really not that much to do during a financial crisis. Or at least for us at that point in time, we didn't think about much. Then we decided, okay, let's go explore new territory. So we wanted to see what it was like in Saudi Arabia. So at this point in time, 2008, you cannot enter Saudi Arabia without either Umrah visa or Hajj visa or having a job, basically. So I got a job as an English teacher, teaching at the University of Hail, which is like a university in the middle of nowhere, as a pretext for us to go and see what Saudi Arabia is like and live in Saudi Arabia. So we moved to Saudi Arabia. This was 2008, 2009 by the time, I think, something like that. This was 2010.
Okay.
And we stayed from 2010 to 2014. And during that time, it was we were kind of looking around at what is the next venture to do. And this was the point in time where startups were really, really coming up, technology startups. And that's when we transitioned to doing this. So we quit the job and went back to the UAE to start our new startup at the time, which was Mel2, which was a peer-to-peer marketplace for secondhand items.
What was that marketplace for?
Secondhand items.
Secondhand items. Okay. You created your own software, own marketplace, like Facebook.
Yes,
marketplace.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. So at the time in the UAE, there was this thing called Dubizzle, which is like the Gumtree, I think, the comparison to Gumtree in the in the UK, and it was very, very strong. But if you think about timelines again, this is when WhatsApp was coming up in incredible popularity. As a matter of fact, it was bought maybe shortly after, around 2015 or something. WhatsApp was bought for like 16 billion or 19 billion, some crazy number. And we were like, the backstory is we were trying to buy a car in the UAE. Technically, actually, my husband was. And he was, because he was we were in Saudi and he was and we were trying to buy a car in the UAE. We were doing this cross-border thing and he's too cheap to like pay for long distance calls, right? So he's like WhatsApping the people. And he discovers that, with chat and with WhatsApp, you actually build a relationship with the seller. You know stuff about the seller, which you maybe wouldn't know with just a phone call. For example, first of all, people are more communicative over chat. And sometimes when you call people, they are, in a hurry or they don't answer or whatever. Second, you can see profile pictures, so you can see what that person looks like. So the very first idea was, let's build a marketplace that is social by nature, so that people can build this relationship, build trust, and also, close deals faster because it's chat, whatever. So it was a marketplace with a built-in chat. So that was the initial impetus. Now, again, back to the idea of networks. We didn't build it ourselves because we are not technical people, right? In the sense of we're not coders. So it was about, okay, now who do we get to build this thing for us, right? And so Murad, my husband, again, has lots of people that he knew from the US. And don't forget, we were in a university village, sort of. So we had a lot of students who were working on this and that. And we were close to kind of the nexus. We were in California. So we were close enough to Silicon Valley, etc. And so we knew a lot of people who had ties to the tech community, etc. And through that, we found some developers and we built out the first iteration of the product. Now, obviously, later on, we brought it in-house as we learned that, you really can't build a product outsourced. You can build a first iteration, but then after that, it's just ridiculous. Now, this, again, is 2015. And fast forward to today, and really it's AI, right? And this the whole dynamic has changed. If I were to build that again today, I think we'll do it in a much different way.
Yeah, of course, things with AI to go is very easy. Let's talk some technical stuff now, yeah? So Web3. So let's talk about Web3 for now, and then we'll go into the AI as well, if you're okay with that. It's a buzzword these days, like people talking about Web3, but most people don't really understand what is it. Even I don't understand what is Web3. Can you explain in very layman terms, please?
So I want to say in a nutshell, Web3 is about financial freedom, right? It is a freedom to own your own money, right? It is the freedom to control your own money, and it's a freedom to have an alternative to the normal financial system. Now, the best way to understand this in context is to think about how did this whole concept arise. So the very first Web3 blockchain, etc., is actually Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network. So the idea of the Bitcoin and the Bitcoin white paper was written in 2008. And again, student of history here, the historical context was it came after the 2008 financial crisis. But it was, it was not something that happened overnight. It was something that was built up for a long time. But after 2008 financial crisis, there was this real impetus and real willingness to adopt because of how people were harmed and hurt by the traditional financial system. So anyway, it's born out of this time where there was huge distrust of the financial system. And what was Bitcoin developed to do? It was developed to have a currency that was outside of government or central control. So they built a pure peer-to-peer network that did not require a middleman to make it work. Okay? And if you want to go into the technical details of how that actually is, let's just say it's an open ledger that anyone can read and anyone can write to under specific conditions, right? And in that way, because it's open for everyone to see, it cannot be corrupted, all right? And so you can keep it peer-to-peer without having a policeman, a court, a judge make sure that the records are, or an auditor make sure that the records are authentic and real. So back to the idea of Bitcoin and Web3 in theory, in general, being a tool for financial freedom. Now, when you have this currency and this technology that is peer-to-peer, that belongs to the people who are running the network, which is yourself, by your participation in the network, you now have control effectively over your own money. You can own your own money. What does that mean? Now, if you put your money in a bank, you don't own your money. The bank owns your money. The bank is using whatever you have in your account to do whatever it wants to do to make money on your money.
Yeah.
The bank today, what they call fractional reserve banking, with these deposits, they can loan out multiples of these amounts. And in some cases, there's no limit on how much they can loan out for these amounts. So for every $1 in the bank, they can loan up to $10, $100, $1,000. They can create loans just off your $1 in the bank, right?
Wow.
Not to mention, when these loans default, which is exactly what happened in the 2008 financial crisis, and the bank goes under, people are coming asking for their money. Guess what? There's no money there.
Yeah.
They've gone and they've used it and they spent it and they did whatever they wanted with it, and it's gone. So when we say you can own your own money, it's another way of saying no one can touch your money, no one can use your money for anything except you. And there is an incredible power to that. If you're a student of econ economics, one of the early concepts, and I think this is also in Islam, is the concept of private capital, or not private capital, private property, private property, which is the right to own something, right? And this includes money. And what we have today, the situation we have today, so this was 2008, and let me tell you about what it is in 2005 and probably going on 2006. I was trying to send money from my bank account in Singapore, because I'm still Singaporean, to my bank account in Saudi Arabia. So Shareen Lee to Shareen Lee in a different country, the bank blocks the transfer. And it required me to justify why I needed to send money from myself to myself in a different country. And it took me a week or so to clear it. We wanted to buy a car, which is why I told the bank, they were like, you need to give us an invoice and you need to jump through all kinds of hoops, call us back, etc., in order for us to send money. And this keeps happening and it continues to happen. Subhanallah. People are having trouble moving their money and you don't really know what's going on. Why is Web3 powerful? It eliminates that middleman. There's no bank who's sending that money on your behalf. You do it yourself. The other party receives it for himself or herself. I wouldn't disagree with that. I think the primary use case for the blockchain and Web3 is about trading and money. But it's not about trading to make money or purely to get rich. It's about having a financial system that you can actually use and own. And that where you have custody over your own funds. Again, this is very key in the society we live in today. So there are other use cases for the blockchain. If I say there are none, people will jump on me. This is untrue. There are many, many use cases for the blockchain, but the primary use case remains finance. But I do not see what the problem with that is. Now, let me give you another angle, which I felt to be very compelling when I first got in. It is a new infrastructure for finance. And that means we as Muslims have a new infrastructure on which we can build Islamic finance. Because the infrastructure that we have today in the traditional banking system is full of riba. And so in order to build Islamic finance or financial models on this infrastructure, so many compromises have to be made. To begin with, the very concept of fiat currency, the US dollar, the pound or whatever, which used to be backed by gold, no longer backed by anything, is born of interest. Right? So how do they make new money? So we go back to the example of the bank. You put in $10 in the bank and they make $1,000 of new money via loans. Because they loan out $1,000 which they've just created out of thin air. And this concept is so problematic from a Sharia perspective. But the scholars have permitted it. I'm not saying money is haram, by the way. I never said that. The scholars have permitted it because of darura. Because you have to. If you don't use the money that we have today, what the heck are we going to do with ourselves, right? Which means we need a new infrastructure in which we can build a money that is free from riba. So from a Muslim's perspective, what is another layer of power to the Web3 infrastructure and the blockchain is a new infrastructure to build Islamic financial systems and models on, which nobody has a right to stop us from doing. Again, that is powerful. Because today, if we try to do anything with the traditional banking system, you're going to have to go through layers and layers of regulatory approvals. You're going to have to talk to the banks. You're going to have to open a window, an Islamic window in a traditional bank, blah, blah, blah. So complicated. But with Web3, open access, internet, you need internet. You need, some idea of what you want to build. You need some developers, and now you have AI, etc. So you have some help there, and you can enter and you can build something new.
Sure. We'll move on. We'll go into the TAKADAO as well. We'll talk about your project. I just wanted to. One thing came to my mind. Like you told me once, I think, that when we met first time, that you guys managed to sold something to IKEA in Saudi Arabia. What was that?
Yeah. So continuing the story of the technology startup we founded, which was the peer-to-peer marketplace with the built-in chat. Now, we developed that for about 8 years. Now, there were lots of ups and downs. And I mean, I can give you a probably 2-hour conversation about all the things we did wrong. We clearly didn't know what we were doing. So it took us 8 years. But finally, alhamdulillah, we moved to Saudi Arabia. We found good investors. We finally understood what the market wanted. And then we got acquired by IKEA in Saudi Arabia.
And how much was that money? Talk about money. How much did you guys manage to earn from that?
I actually have an NDA, so I cannot reveal how much we sold that for. But it was alhamdulillah sufficient for us. The investors made money. So all of our investors made money. We were happy with the outcome. And it was in the 7-figure sum.
We're just trying to, people like ourselves that's sitting out there, just trying to give them an idea to encourage them. If they build something, there is a potential there. You can sell it to bigger retail stores and stuff, so you can make money out.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at it from that way, everything is about scale. It's about what actually you're doing. So that particular business was very much localized, right? Because, for example, Gumtree in the UK has never been able to scale outside of the UK. That's where their stronghold is. And it's very similar for a lot of these types of businesses. So classified, social commerce, etc. They usually get to some kind of market liquidity in one single market, and it's very hard for them to repeat this outside. Okay, there are a few exceptions like OLX, etc., but those are very rare. So that particular business was very localized. Now, if you want to build a more global business, and they tend to be non-operational businesses, so like software businesses, those scale easily. Now, the reason why our business was very localized is because it had a high level of a very large component of logistics, right? So you had to deliver stuff to people, etc. So that's very hard to scale. So if you build kind of more software-based businesses, which are easier to scale, you can expect higher multiples, right? Now, obviously, these are all tech startups, etc. Now, if you build brick and mortar, which, by the way, a lot of people are like looking at startups because you have the millions and billion-dollar exits, tens of millions, 100 millions, billion-dollar exits. But they don't realize that, as a matter of fact, the founder doesn't get that $10 billion exit. Let's give it, for example. The founder, by that time, to reach that 10 billion mark exit, most of the founders, or a large proportion of them, have already sold so much equity that they are probably they maybe own less than 10% of the company, right? So there are trade-offs. Now, by contrast, when you build a small business, you probably own all of it. So whatever you sell, you get in your pocket. So you look at the difference in exits, it doesn't really translate to money sometimes. Okay, I'm not saying all the times, right? Yeah. You have people like Elon Musk and Kalanick who got really, really rich from selling their businesses, don't get me wrong. But yeah, so these are some of the things to think about when you're building a business. Okay, it's not always bigger is better.
Yeah. And what's your one advice you have for someone who has got an idea about a tech startup, and they want to raise raise funds for it? What's the idea? What's the steps you're going to give it to a budding entrepreneur who want to start a tech startup?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is, okay, there's advice I would give to raise money, and there's advice I'd give to build a business long term. And the advice I give to build a business long term is you should find a customer who's willing to pay for whatever it is you are doing before you start anything. Because we often have these great ideas and we think, oh wow, they're so brilliant. But then we go to the market and we realize nobody's willing to pay for it. Or we haven't a way to figure out how to get people to understand what it is so that they'll pay for it. So I think number one, if you want to build a business, is to find a customer that actually is willing to pay for it. And then it shouldn't be a customer that's difficult to find, because then those types of businesses are very bespoke and very small. So if you're talking about tech startup, you want to be able to find these customers everywhere you look. Like you look left, you look right, you should be able to find them easily because you need mass adoption.
Yeah.
So that's for building a business. If you want to raise money, it's a different but correlated path. If you want to raise money, you need to be able to tell a very good story. Now, in order to tell a very good story, first of all, you need to know your customer. So you should be looking for the customer. That still stands. But then once you know that you have that in background, then you need to hone your storytelling skills. You need to hone your communication skills. Now, me and you come from Asian backgrounds. So for us, like the most important thing is STEM. Science, technology, engineering, math,
That's
doctor,
correct.
lawyer, 6 professions. Anything else is like, you know what, your mother is going to look at you
They're
with
not going to be
disappointment.
happy with it, They're like, oh, my son didn't become a doctor, I'm not happy with him, he's still not happy.
There you go. However, so coming from that background, when I got to America, as part of your college degree, you have to take communications classes. So go to and like sociology, social sciences, etc. So I go to the communications class. I'm like, this is such a waste of time. This is not math. This is not engineering. This is not science. This is just talking, right? And it turns out that this is the most important thing in life, because you can be the smartest person in the world. You can have the best ideas. If you cannot communicate them, nobody will realize that you're the smartest person in the world. Somebody on TikTok was like, you can be this level of smart and this level of communicative, or whatever what I'm trying to say. And when people perceive you, they will not see this level of smart. They will see this level of smart.
That's right.
Because that's how you're able to communicate. So storytelling is so important. And the only way to hone that skill is practice, practice, practice. Just talk to everyone you can find.
Brilliant. Let's talk about TAKADAO. So what exactly it is and how does it work?
So TAKADAO is a technology company that builds tools to help people achieve financial freedom. That's our mission statement. Now, one of our first platforms that we helped to create was the LifeDAO. Now, what is the LifeDAO? The LifeDAO supports each and every one of its members with tools to achieve financial freedom. So give you the typical customer journey, or not customer journey, the member journey for the LifeDAO, because the LifeDAO in itself is owned by its members, right? So TAKADAO, we service the LifeDAO. It uses our technology, but we do not own it. It's owned by the people. And this is the promise of Web3 again. So the typical user journey, you come, you join, and what we try to help you do right off the bat is to build a network. So within the community of the LifeDAO, we introduce you to other people. We ask you, how can we help you? What is it that you're trying to achieve? And we try to network you so that you have that network. Remember, I said network is important. Network is important not only in business, but it's also in your personal life, especially if you're somebody who wants to make hijrah, if you're somebody who has something that you need in your personal life. The second thing we try to do is to educate you. So here comes a lot of community-led webinars where people are sharing their experiences of doing various things. And the things that we are mainly focused on today, financial literacy, with a focus on Islamic finance, crypto literacy, again, focus on Islamic finance, hijrah, because that's what a lot of the members want. And so this is where we play in terms of education. The third step we try to provide for people now is we've created a protection fund which mimics insurance, but obviously is a Sharia compliant, community-based and community-owned insurance. And we say to you, well, before you embark in your financial your journey of financial freedom, first thing you need to do, my friend, put on your seatbelt. You need to start by protecting what you already have. And that's where the protection funds come in. And this is the first layer of technology that TAKADAO, the company, has built, because it's a peer-to-peer community-owned protection fund where, for example, Majid, you are a member. If something happens to you, as in you pass away, your family will get a payout as a result, okay? And there are other protection funds coming. There's one specifically for burial, and this is very important for Muslims in the West because it's crazy expensive to have a Muslim burial in the West. There's what that we're planning a health insurance as well, or a health protection fund that's also coming out, inshallah. The fourth step in the journey of the LifeDAO is now investments. Now you have now built a network, got mentorship from your network. You have now got educated, got mentorship from the education. You have now protected the wealth that you have. What do you do next? Now you need to grow your wealth, right? And here we have collective investment pools. What we have today are private investment clubs where it's members only. And we invest together. Now there's a rationale for why that is, but suffice it to say there's strength in numbers, right? The larger tickets you have, the more investment opportunities that are open to you. So collective investment pools. And the final step in the journey is what we call the life card. Now, a lot of people are like, okay, I'm crypto rich. I have 1 Bitcoin. I have so much money in crypto, but how do I spend it? And this is where we connect the dots back to real life. With the life card, you can spend your cryptocurrency like anywhere Visa is accepted. So this is the journey. Now, at the end of the day, what we're trying to achieve here is give people tools to break free from the traditional financial system, which is holding us back. And when I say us, I really do mean Muslims. It's holding us back from being a powerful, a power in today's world. Today we are weak. And we're weak not because we have no numbers, we are weak because we have no money.
Yeah.
And that's how the world works today. The power does not come from population size. The power comes from how much assets do you have access to, how much assets do you wield. And this we need for our community.
Yeah, and since you said the community that we need to become rich, so tell me about how can someone become a crypto rich?
Crypto what? Sorry, can you say that again?
We're talking about the becoming rich, and when you have got money, you have got resources and all the rest of it. So how can someone become a crypto rich? Give me a roadmap.
Well, number one, I think that's what we're trying to achieve at the LifeDAO, right? So number one, I highly recommend people build a network. Now within the crypto space, there's changes that's happening all the time. As an individual, you cannot keep up with it unless you're just 24/7 reading about it, etc., etc. And who has time for that, right? Who has the patience for that? So building a network is really important because you're going to hear from different sources what's happening. There's like eyes in your network that's on everything at any given time, which you cannot do on your own. Number two is to get mentorship, right? And to have from among your network people that you can talk to, bounce ideas off, etc. Number three, definitely get yourself educated. So from the LifeDAO ourselves, we do have various, webinars. We have recorded content. We have hands-on crypto workshops, as you're familiar.
Yes.
And you want to test it, and you want to try it, and you want to do this thing on your own, at a small scale, and you want to play with it until you get ready. And then the next step, obviously, is now to start deploying your capital. But the problem with deploying your capital, very often people are scared because they don't really know what they're doing at the beginning. So here is where it's recommended, again, to do this in a group, right? So that you have other people that you can soundboard off, and that you can, you have access to bigger sizes. So this is kind of the roadmap I would suggest. Now, if you ask me, technically speaking, what do you need to do to get in? This is a little bit confusing. Okay, so there's two paths you can take. Path number one is what we call the centralized exchange path. Now, these centralized exchange are like Binance, Coinbase, KuCoin. These function essentially as unregulated banks. Okay, you put your money in there, and they actually own your money, and you trade, but they are trading on your behalf. Now, I would say that is one way to get in. You can also become rich from it, but then that is not the ideal way. Okay. The second path is what we call decentralized finance. And this is what I've been talking about and preaching for the last, I don't know how long we've been on this call, but it's about control over your own money. Now, this is through decentralized wallets, such as MetaMask, Trust Wallet, and if you're looking for Sharia compliant ones, Sahel Wallet. And in that path, there are other types of risks. So you're not afraid of the Binance, the KuCoin taking your money and running away. What you're afraid of is getting hacked. Okay. Now going down that path is going to have a much steeper learning curve, but it's going to get you to the point where you can be, I would say, in control. Now, Majid, you're asking such a difficult question. I cannot, if I start down this path, it's going to be hours before we get out here. No, I would say come join the LifeDAO. And we're going to walk you through all this.
Yeah, sure. So, we're not going to go into the details of it, but one thing I want to understand, because you guys are innovators, you and your husband, you guys are innovators, you've been innovating things. Tell me about the mindset behind an innovation. What mindset, if I want to innovate, because they say if you want to make money, either you become an innovator or you invent something, or help people with something they need for. So tell me about the innovator's mindset.
I think it's a different thing. Being an innovator and making a lot of money are two different things. you'll find that an innovator has great ideas and maybe launch something really, really creative, but don't necessarily make money. Because the innovation mindset is very often ahead of what people are currently doing, and very often what people may or may not be ready to accept. So you have a lot of these inventions. I can't think of one right now, but an invention that was way ahead of its time. I'm sure you've heard people say this, right? And it's very successful in maybe 2025, but it fell in 2000, right? Because it was too far ahead of its time. So being innovative does not equate making money. If you want to make money, all you need to do is actually quite simple. You don't have to be innovative at all. You need to be very, very good at whatever it is you are presently doing. And fortunately or unfortunately, you got to be patient. And there's this adage where they're saying you need 10,000 hours of anything to become an expert, right? And what I say to my kids is like, I don't care what it is that you do, just be really, 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 really good at it and be an expert at it. And there's almost no field in the world, if you become really good at it, you cannot make some money, a decent living in, right? So it's a different mindset. And then the other thing about making money, there are two ways of doing it. You can be an entrepreneur and you can create your own opportunities to make money, or you can work for somebody else. It's not always black and white, which one is better, right? It just depends time and place, etc. But at the end of the day, you always need to make sure you invest your money, because nobody gets rich from making a salary. Let's put it that way. More often than not, even if your salary is very high, you end up spending most of it, because the more you have coming in on a daily basis, the more you get used to spending it. So you need to figure out, how do you invest your money to grow your assets? That's what actually brings you long-term generational wealth in the long term. In the long run, you need to grow your assets. And so investments is such a key thing. Somebody said the other day, I was like, yeah, that is so true. No school teaches us everything except about money. It does not teach us how to invest our money. It does not teach us how to budget. It does not teach us about the financial system and what to look out for. Nothing. Unless you go in college and you become a finance major, and even then, I'm not sure it teaches you the truth. So this is something we have to learn, and we have to be deliberate about. It's not something that will just come.
Sure. And you talk about investment. So I want to ask something like, how can you start investing if you have never done it before?
Find your comfort zone. Be comfortable with having this amount of money you are ready to lose. And then you need to think about, what are your goals in life? And what are your principles in life? So for Muslims, obviously, we are looking for something that's Sharia compliant. But then think a little bit down and be like, what is my long-term goal? What am I supposed to save for or budget for, or whatever the heck it is that you're trying to do? That is a good way to start, because you have a goal, and then you have a way to get there. You have an idea of you got to do something to get there, right? And then after that, you budget, you do research, and you figure out what fits into your timeline, what fits into your goals, what fits into your principles, and then you start deploying. It's a really, really complex question, because there are so many different ways to go about this. If you want to stay in the stock market, you stay in the stock market, and it's complex again, because different people have different circumstances. For example, you guys have easier access to London Stock Exchange, whereas it's maybe different for somebody who's in Pakistan, for example. I don't know what kind of investment opportunities they have there, etc. And again, it's different for somebody from Saudi. So it's a very broad thing. Again, get with a community, get with a network, and that's where you figure these things out.
Let's finish this. So one thing, if you could change about people use money in this day and age, what would it be?
One thing we could change about people using money?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
What do you mean though? What do you mean by people using money?
People have got money, it's someone who has got money, but then like people spending money on clothing, this and that. So one thing you like people want to change the way okay, let me rephrase this. How do you think, one thing you want to mention about the relationship people have got with their money in this day and age?
I think for me personally, I hate debt. And I think today it's far, far, far too easy to get into debt. It used to be a little bit harder, you know, where you would only engage in debt for big purchases. So things like cars and homes, whatever. But today you have things like buy now, pay later. And like people are in debt, not even realizing they've gone into debt. I think that is a very, very problematic thing. Debt is a very problematic thing.
Yeah.
Because it cripples you right from the start. So forget about like, if you are in debt, you cannot build wealth because you first have to get out of debt. Not to mention there's a psychological weight when you're in debt that you don't have when you're not in debt. And that psychological weight it actually causes a lot of hardship in ways that we maybe don't perceive. So I think debt is one of the things I would like to erase, if possible, from people's habits.
Relationship with the money. And finally,
Yeah.
what success means to you? What is success?
Alhamdulillah. So this is a very good question, and it's one that I've kind of thought about. And subhanAllah, it was actually best described by there's a man named Dr. Suleiman. He's the chairman of the Sharia board of Rajhi Bank. So we met with him, we were explaining what we do at TAKADAO, etc. And he said, you know, the journey of what you guys are doing is going to be difficult, it's going to be long, people are going to fight you all the way. But you just have to do your part and you have to try, because success comes only from Allah, right? If you get financial success is from Allah. If you get whatever kind of success is from Allah. Your only thing is to try. And if you try it, and even if it fails, because what you're doing is good, somebody will pick up after you and build on what you've done and maybe scale it up and make it into something successful. But your early efforts would have meant and counted for something. And so for me, I'm like, I think success is just trying and trying really hard and impacting the trajectory of what happens next. So yeah, alhamdulillah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.